Hi, Tom.
Hello, good morning. This is morning for me. This is a little earlier than I'm used to being communicative. I'm a diehard night owl and insomniac, so here I am,
And
set my
it's
own.
9 o'clock out there. It's noon here already. Before I'm on the East Coast, before we talk about your new album, 24th Street Blues, I was hoping we could go back to, talk about some of the things that led up to this point. Now, I know you're in San Francisco now, but you're from the East Coast, right? Can you talk about where you grew up and like
Yeah, sure. Um, so I was born in Brooklyn, New York. Both sides of my family are from Brooklyn.
Brooklyn?
Going back a bit, and grew up in New Jersey, northern New Jersey. I grew up in a town called Montclair, a very nice
Oh,
place to
yeah.
raise your kids.
Yeah.
Famous for Buzz Aldrin and Olympia Dukakis and a number of other people. I think about my high school, Montclair High School. Joe Walsh was class president in 1962 or something like that. And Richard Lloyd went there for a year when his parents
Television.
had to get him out of New York so that he'd graduate high school. And his best friend was Albert Anderson, who went on to become the guitar player he's the other Al Anderson in Bob Marley and the Wailers. Also, Kenny Margolis of Mink DeVille and later Cracker. They all went to my high school.
Wow, that's
Um,
a really good
yeah,
group of
they're all
people
way
right
older than
there.
me, quite a bit older than me. But I was like, oh, that's cool.
Richard
Um,
Lloyd, great guitar
Yeah,
player.
I read his book and I was like, and he was like, oh, and he spent his senior year at Montclair High School because he had relatives there, and he was gonna fail out of high school in New York City, and his parents like finished in Montclair, um, and then I went to so I grew up in Montclair, New Jersey. I went to college in Maine,
Really, what
and
college?
I went to Colby College in Waterville, Maine, which is
That's a good school.
yeah, it's in it's I refer to it as you didn't get into Harvard, so maybe you go to Colby. I don't know. It's a lot of
Did
wannabe
you try to
Ivy
get into Harvard?
No, no, I didn't. But certainly a lot of my prep school classmates there did. It's like it was weird. It was a little culture shock for me going there. But it was great, and I met the people that I wound up being in a band with. All met there. I had really formative musical experiences there. Really learned how to play in bands and how to play music, and so it was
Can
good
we
for
go?
that.
Can we step back for a second? When you were
Yeah.
growing up in Brooklyn and then in New Jersey, do you remember when you first started listening to music and what you were
Oh,
listening to back then?
I don't have a I can't, my parents were into music. My dad's a diehard jazz fan, and since my parents who were my dad's in his late 80s. My parents are both in their 80s, and they were Kennedy Democrats, so a lot of folk music. They were involved in the civil rights movement and stuff like that. So like a lot of folk music, and that was there all the time. So Peter,
Well,
Paul, and
like Pete,
Mary
I
and
was just
stuff
gonna
like
say
that.
Peter, Paul, and Mary.
Loved it.
Yeah.
Joan Baez and then a lot of classical music too. They listen to the classical station from New York City. WQXR was a big thing. So records in the house when we were little kids, we had our own like sort of dance set record player, and a lot of like kids records and Jungle Book and Peter and the Wolf and stuff like that. So music was just always there. So
When did
and
you start playing?
later than most people. I had a guitar when well, that's not really right. I took piano lessons when I was like in third grade,
Yeah,
and,
no.
and really hated it. Didn't like, I just didn't like it. My teacher wasn't very good, and I wanted to play like Elton John, and she didn't. That wasn't in her wheelhouse, And so, I just it like didn't come necessarily very easily. And then I had a guitar, and I took some lessons, and it just is the same thing. Like I kind of had a bad teacher, and I learned a little bit, but then I really connected with I really started to play when I was like 16, 17 years old.
It's
I
not too
had
late
a
of a
guy
start.
who, yeah, and I found a guy that like was able to teach me kind of like stuff that really clicked with me. So it was like sort of I learned a lot of bluegrass music, a lot of like country blues guitar, very like sort of Reverend Gary Davis and Mississippi John Hurt and stuff like that. And this guy that that taught me was like he was fantastic at that and a bunch of other stuff. And he was a terrific teacher, and he's still teaching. I think he's still teaching in New Jersey. He wasn't that much older than me, but it was great. And um, so that's when I really clicked. And so sort of right from about junior year of college on, I'm a junior year of high school on, I was really I started spending a lot of time with my guitar and less time with my books.
Sorry, I stepped away there for a minute because
Yeah.
somebody's doing the lawn outside, which I doesn't usually happen when I'm recording, but it's happening today. So let me just go back to Maine now. So you did you apply to a lot of schools before you decided to go to Colby, or how did you end up
I,
there?
I had a friend of mine's in from high school's brother went there, and a couple other people I knew went there, and I thought that I would be I thought that I was like would be into nature, and it's out there in a sort of bucolic setting in central Maine. Actually, I thought that I don't know why I went there, to be honest with you. It was and I got there, and it's like the winter was a shock. Like 5 feet of snow, 6 feet of snow on the ground. It was, it
Yeah.
forced you into your dorm room to, concentrate on stuff other than going outside.
So we're kind of around the same age, I think. And I went to the West. I left the East Coast to go to the West Coast too. Pretty much similar, except I
Yeah.
went to work in the music industry. My question for you is, what made you decide to move to, I don't know if it was San Francisco first instead of, say, LA or New York? I mean, what was your
Oh, well,
thinking behind that?
there was a whole thing. I had a whole sort of professional music career on the East Coast. I was in this band that, we got signed. We put out 5 records, six, a
Oh,
bunch
really?
of
Which
singles.
band was that? I didn't know
We
about
were a
that.
band. We were a band called Go to Blazes. We were signed to. Eastside Digital, which was a subsidiary of Ryko Disc. Our manager worked for Ryko Disc, and we also had like a licensed our records in Europe, and we had a 10-year run uh, that was in many ways I see it if you have a manager, a booking agent, and a label, that's a success. And then the band ended, and I moved to San Francisco following a love affair, basically, and to the woman who I'm now married.
Well, let me
But
go back here for a second
yeah,
because I saw that in 2020, I did see a Go to Blazes record. I actually liked it. I listened to it and I liked it a lot. I didn't realize there was a long history behind that band. I was going to ask you if it was a side project, but Ryko Disc was in New England, and you said
oh,
you
they
had a
were
man.
based in Ryko was based in. They had 3 offices: an office in New York, an office in Philadelphia, and an office in Minneapolis. So
Oh yeah, I'm
that was
sorry. Ryko
yeah.
Disc,
But
Minneapolis.
Ryko
Yeah,
also, there was a
Minneapolis.
subsidiary of Ryko called Slow River that was in Boston, and they had some success with a couple of bands. They were the first band to do all those official. They really, really made a pile of money reissuing the Bowie catalog, the Elvis Costello catalog, and a bunch of other things. And then they tried to break bands, and they had some success. They signed Bob Mould's what was it? What was his band?
Sugar? Sugar?
Sugar. Sugar
Yeah,
was on. Yeah. So
yeah.
like they had some real success with other artists, but they were primarily they reissued all the Zappa catalog, and so they were the high the height of high-end compact disc, mastered, remastered for, like not just rushed out, but, like really well packaged box sets and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I knew that Ryko disc was Minneapolis. I don't know
Yeah.
why I got
Yeah.
confused. It said they were from New England. So you didn't. So when did you move to San
I
Francisco?
didn't move to San Francisco until 1998. So I've been
Okay.
here, so I was a grown up when I moved here. I mean, I was in my 30s.
Wow,
And
you have had a long career because I know you got like about 6 solo records here because I
yeah.
listened to all those and I did listen to the Go to Blazes that came out in 2020. I really like that a lot. So you got there
Oh,
in night.
was that that's not that the vinyl reissue of that that's the thing that came out in 2020 it was a vinyl reissue of a record that we did strictly for this German label where it was like for their mail order catalog, and that's something that I did right during COVID actually. Um
I
that's
found it on
probably,
Bandcamp.
yeah, I wonder, yeah,
I
did I,
found it on
yeah, I
Bandcamp.
sold that on, yeah, I sold that on Bandcamp. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was like sort of behind that. That yeah, I was happy that came out. I wish it came out on a, I wish it escaped rather than being released. It was like one of those classic things. Oh, I wish somebody had the attention and care that we put into this. I wish somebody had put a little bit more attention and care into actually releasing it, but whatever. It's out there. I'm glad that it is. So
Well, I
uh,
spent a little time on it. I liked it, and the guitar playing was really good on there. And I know you played a lot, all the guitars, I think. So, I mean, it
yeah,
was
pretty
good.
much. Yeah.
In 2000, you put out the Boarding House Rules, which I guess was that your first solo
That was
record?
my first solo record, and what I say about I like to say about that record is it's the best I could do at the time.
Well, yeah, that's pretty much
It's,
been my whole life, I think.
it's the
So
best I could do at the time. That and I've gone back and listened to it. I'm like, it's not so bad. I should say that you know the big thing for me is that when I was in Go to Blazes, I didn't sing. I didn't open my mouth. I just smoked cigarettes and played guitar. And that and I didn't sing because the singer in Go to Blazes was just so good. He was a tremendously gifted singer, and it was an intimidating thing, and I just didn't open my mouth. And so I had to learn. I moved out to San Francisco and taught myself how to sing. And Boarding House Rules was right at the beginning of that experiment. So
I mean, I mean, you've done a lot. You've got a lot of releases, but there were a few that I wanted to just focus on because before we talk about the new
yeah,
record,
sure,
that Cool Blue Feeling, you recorded that in Portland.
yeah,
I really like that record a lot. You kind of remind me, I don't know if anyone's told you this before, kind of on that record at least, like a Warren Zevon-ish, and it's on more of a alt country tip. It's like if
yeah. Warren Zevon's a big one for me.
I
Uh,
love him. Well, loved
yeah,
him.
he's a big one for me. I mean, I got um, we're a lot of us are aware of him before we were aware of him because of the cuts that he got on other people with Linda Ronstadt doing Poor Pitiful Me, and various people doing Carmelita. Um, but I got excitable. I was like young when Excitable Boy came out,
Great record.
and I just love that record. It's just
Yeah.
so good, and just it was so. I still remember it was so arresting to listen to a song like Rolling the Headless Thompson Gunner, and he tells this whole sort of dark story within a song, and it's just I listened to it again and again and again, and it really informed the way I thought that a song should go, where a song should have, for me, it should have a point of view, and it should go from point A to point B. It should have some narrative structure to it. That's what I like.
Yeah, my favorite was Accidentally Like a Martyr on that record. I just
Incredible song,
love it.
incredible. Yeah, it's just beautiful, and the playing on it and everything about it was so cool.
Good. I didn't know what you would think about me saying you reminded me of
Well,
Warren
yeah, and
Zevon.
the funny thing is I marvel at when when I think my favorite record of his is one of his is close to the end was the record Life Will Kill You, and that's the one that's got Life Will Kill You, and it's got I Was in the House When the House Burned Down, and classically Don't Let Us Get Sick, which a lot, which has become it's like a become kind of underground famous, and it's an incredible record. And I got a friend of mine gave it to me on cassette. He was working for some, and it was like one of those things. He just passed it to me. He said, "You might like this," and I remember I was like cleaning the house, and I put it on. I listened to it like 5 times in a row the day I got it, because it was just such an incredible record.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because Paul Koldery, who recorded
Yeah, I know that
record,
they worked on that. Well, I have a direct connection to that record. Is that Chuck Prophet, whose band I was in for 3 years, played on the record and spent a week in Boston because Paul brought him in on that. And
what Paul told me when Warren Zevon was getting ready to come there, he didn't have a band. He goes, could you put a band together for me? And he put the whole band together, and he must have called Chuck, and Chuck was, because that record is definitely an underrated record. I listened to it, and not a lot of people know about that one.
I mean, just it's incredible. And he did, and the crazy thing about that record is he did not know he was sick when he made it. He didn't know. And it's just like, okay, that's weird. You've got a song called My Shit's Fucked Up that basically just lays everything out. Went to the doctors. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And it's just like there's not a clunker on the record. And you can't say that about all of his records. There's always some failed experiment, where somewhere.
He had his own way of doing things. I got to know Dan Dugmore's daughter, became friends of mine, and he played with her, with Warren a lot. He played with all of
I know exactly who Dan Dugmore is.
Yeah.
I'll just gonna turn my camera around to there's my pedal steel guitar right there.
Wow, this is going to be for people that are watching on YouTube.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, you're holding a guitar in your hand, and I don't know if later you want to play a song, but it's been done on my show before.
I'm holding my guitar because I feel more comfortable. Like it stops me from completely hunching over. So it's sort of my prop.
Well, I'll leave that to you. If you want to strum something later, you can. The Ballad, Blues, and Union Dues. You do a cover of the Divinyls, I Touch Myself, on that record. That really took me off guard.
Yeah, well, that record, I was like at a real weird loose end. It had been a couple years since I'd made a record, since I'd made Deliver Me. I had quit Chuck Prophet's band. I didn't know what I was gonna do. And I had this friend of mine had a studio, and I didn't know what to do. And he was just like, I'm booking this time for you. Just come in. And I just had this concept I'll make a live in the studio, all covers record. And I say about that record, anything that you want to know about me musically is contained within those tracks, because
some deep tracks too, man.
Yeah, it's like Mississippi Fred McDowell, Al Furrier, like obscure rockabilly, and the Divinyls done as a sort of
that's why that tune took me by surprise. I'm like, wait a second, he's got all these obscure tunes on here.
It's so weird. I love that song. It's such a good song. I remember when it came out. There's something just really arresting about the way it sounds. She was such a great singer, and
Christine Amphlett.
Yeah, she was so great, and they were like such a cool band. And like I wasn't like a super fan or anything like that, but I've always listened to the radio, and when that song came on the radio, there's something about it that's I think it's like the bass line in it is reminding me a lot of Paul McCartney for some reason. There's something really
interesting.
just some only because it's super duper melodic, and it's sort of is this thing that you hear, and I think that's Randy Jackson playing bass on it actually from American Idol and
Huh.
Journey, you know.
Well, see, I
And
was a Divinyls fan when Boys in Town and the early stuff came out, and I thought they were more like a lot of people called her the Australian female Bon Scott, but they were more punkier. And then when I
yeah,
heard that song, I was like, what? That was so different than their earlier stuff, but it's a really good
it was
song.
it was like it was a you couldn't get away from it. But whenever I remember I if I was found myself in a place and it was on the jukebox, I always put it on because it was just like it was a weird record. I mean, it's
Yeah.
really dirty and but just really also just really effective song and a terrific melody and stuff like that. I always liked it, and I just thought it was like funny and creepy when a dude sang it. And I learned how to play it on the guitar, and I was like it was a parlor trick that I would pull out, sometimes at on gigs and stuff like that.
Well,
Like, I'm playing my sincere songs, and got my acoustic guitar like like the dude in I gave my love a cherry from Animal House, and I touch myself folk style, and it's
yeah,
like
you
really
caught
creepy
me.
me
You
out.
you you definitely got my attention with that. I'm gonna just talk about one more other record, and then we're gonna go to 24th Street Blues, Show Business Baby, which is like
Yeah,
to me a garage rock record. When I listened to it, I was
it's
like, "Is
exactly
this the
what.
same guy?" I was like, "What?"
Well,
You
that's my thing. It's like I had this. I'd been playing, doing my singer songwriter thing for a while, but I have like a split personality, and like one of my favorite bands ever was Rockpile.
Oh yeah, good
I
band.
love Nick Lowe and Dave Edmonds and Dr. Feelgood and Mickey Jupp, and I love the Flaming Groovies. I was good friends with Roy Loney. I subbed in and out of Roy's band,
I saw him on your list. I'm gonna go
and
over that list. Yeah,
so and I'm a sensitive singer songwriter that has this completely parallel track as a bar band guitar player, and proudly, like people say bar band as a sort of an insult or a put down. And it's like, no, I grew up playing music in bars, and I love the electric guitar. I have, and that's the way I like to play. And Show Business Baby was
good
an
record.
homage to my rock and roll record collection, basically.
Like I baby let me in,
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
What in the world is a what in the world? That's a good one.
That
And then the
I
handshake
say about
deal.
that song, I say I was shooting for Willie DeVille and I wound up closer to Eddie Money. I don't know.
It's funny you mentioned Rockpile Dave Edmonds because I was thinking I knew the bride when she used to rock and roll. It's funny
Yeah,
that was him. I know. I think Nick Lowe actually recorded that, but
yeah, but it's right, but but it's it's Dave Edmonds playing guitar, and it's rock. That's rock.
yeah,
Those guys were a team.
good one. And I don't know if you heard me say handshake deal, but the guitar in that record, along with the singing, is really good. I mean, I wanted to just mention some of your past records
I'm
because
really glad you like that record.
people need to hear these records, Tom. I mean, these are really good records. I was really not surprised because, I mean, you're obviously a musician that's been around for a while, but these records, like the ones I mentioned, I would recommend them to anybody for different reasons. Because one is like Warren Zevon, and the other one's a garage rock record. And I was like,
Yeah.
wow, versatility, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I sometimes I don't know how to put the two of those. I don't know how to put the two of those things together, on a record that seems cohesive. So I just sort of kept those parts separated, in a way. I don't know. Maybe that's not the best strategy to like show off my how well rounded I am or whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm sorry that I didn't put two and two together and realized Go to Blazes was the band that you had all those records on, and then
yeah,
you had
and then we were really, we started out as a garage rock band, like very much in that, you know, garage music, surf music, rockabilly music. That was the way we started out, and we morphed into something else. We became more songwriter influenced, and you know, that was the thing. And so that's like very much of a deep part of who I was. And I'd found, you know, as I worked, you know, as a sideman for other people out here playing pedal steel or guitar or doing my own thing, I got farther and farther away from this sort of guitar that the way I like to play guitar a lot of the time, which is, you know, a little bit loud and a little bit brash. And that's why Show Business Baby was it's really it's a genre exercise for me. But I like to say I find as many ways as I can say baby in a song without being self-conscious about it. And and I did it.
So by the point that when you get to the point of doing 24th Street Blues, if you did like 10 records with Go to Blazes and you had like 5 or 6 solo records, and I think you played on another record, on other people's records too, which we'll talk about, you've got an unbelievable body of work here. So you get to this point, and this record is like a concept album about the endangered culture of living ghosts of San Francisco's Mission District, where
Right.
you reside.
That's a little bit of bio speak there.
I didn't write that
You know,
quote. I took
it's like
that from the
you
bio.
know, it's a, you know, that's, you know, when you're pitching something that's you gotta have language around it,
It's good language. It's good language.
it's good. It's um I was happy with the way with that came out, but you know, it's just really, I just sort of wrote about I when I was getting ready to make a record, I knew that I had a certain amount of songs that were about my neighborhood, uh, and my surroundings and what was happening in San Francisco, and so I didn't set out to write something specifically about that. I don't think that far ahead. It's just when I had those songs, when I had this group of songs, I saw like a sort of a pattern, and then I wrote the title track, you know, much later than some of the other songs, and because I had what I wanted to call, I knew I wanted to call the record 24th Street Blues. It harkens back to a line in a song on That Cool Blue Feeling. The song number 9 uses that. The title of the song is number 9, and I think it's also the 9th track on the record.
Number 9, number
Yeah.
9.
Yeah, it's getting right.
Sorry.
The train. Yeah, exactly. And it says 24th Street Blues in it. And I was like, that's a title of a record. And then I wound up writing that song, and it's just about living in a place that's changing, and about my neighborhood, and the hyper changes that sort of happened. And there you have it, I guess.
Hey, you know, I heard, and you know, there's a lot of interesting things about this record, which I'm going to get into, but I want to ask you, the Sad Bastard Club, that's something that you started doing in San Francisco. Did that influence this record at all?
Not really. The Sad Bastard Club is it's the somewhat tongue-in-cheek title of a singer-songwriter night that I do once a month at the bar that I work in, the Makeout Room. And I commented to a friend of mine that I initially started it with, that I'm going to do a singer-songwriter night. It's not an open mic. It's going to be totally curated. I'm just going to invite people that I like down to play, and use it as an excuse to finish songs, to try out new things. And I'm going to call it the Sad Bastard Club, because there's nothing sadder than a dude sitting on a stool with an acoustic guitar. And sure enough, my friend was like, yeah, we're going to call it that. And then I knew that before I knew it, it was on the marquee. And I was like, oh, I guess we're calling it the Sad Bastard Club. And it's going all, you know, it's more than 10 years now. So
yeah, I've read about it. It's fantastic,
and
man.
During COVID, we made a whole TV show out of it. Actually, I had keys to the bar, and another friend of mine, we decided, everybody was doing live streams, We decided we were going to make something that was not live streamed. We were going to film something. So it was a multi-camera shoot. I invite two guests down. They play a couple songs and I'd interview them. And we did that. I think we have 30 hours of
Wow.
separate shows that are up on YouTube under the moniker, the Sad Bastard Club. And we had Peter Case and Chuck Prophet and Kelly Stoltz and a bunch of other people. And it really came out great. So, yeah.
Getting back to the record, what is also cool about this is that you have an illustrated songbook that's going to come with the record, and every song's accompanied by a painting done by Deidre. Is it Deidre or Deidre
It's
White?
Deirdre.
Deirdre White.
That's right. That's my wife. Yeah.
Well, what a great idea and a great concept. Tell me how you came up with that. Did she just say, I'm going to do a painting for each of these songs?
She was not volunteering to do that. I volunteered her to do that. I just had this, not to make a long story short, in around 2017, I had a song published in Acoustic Guitar Magazine. I'd done a session out there. You can look it up. It's on their video, whatever. And one of the songs they played, they transcribed, and it was in the magazine, and it was like huge thing for me. It was like, oh, this is really cool. And just seeing a lead sheet of one of my songs in the magazine kicked this thing off in my head. Maybe I should do something like this. And then when I was getting ready to make this record, I kind of decided I wasn't going to do vinyl. I'd done vinyl on my last two releases, and the turn times on vinyl got really, really long.
Yeah.
And having toured a bunch with vinyl, both here and overseas, it's expensive, fragile, and heavy. And so, and I sold through my runs, but it's a pain. So I wasn't going to do it, but I wanted to have something to offer that wasn't just a CD. And I was like, well, I'm going to do a songbook. And when I was a kid and I was learning how to play, you could go to the store and you could buy the songbook of your favorite album. So you could go buy the songbook for Excitable Boy by Warren Zevon. And here's, published by whoever, I forget what label Warren was on. Was he on?
Oh, I don't even know. That's a good question.
Was he on Epic or Reprise, Warner Bros? Anyway, whoever his record company is, his publishing company would put out this songbook, and it looked exactly like the record. Same like I had Harvest by Neil
Young. Asylum. I should have known that.
Asylum, right? Yeah. Thank you. I should have known that too. This is embarrassing. Thank you for saving me.
I just looked it up on Wikipedia.
Yeah. So there's you didn't have to say that. You could have said you just pulled that out of your mind.
Well, I remembered some of the songs from the record, which is a miracle because the brain starts getting a little fried after a life in this industry, as I'm sure.
Yeah. So I always, if I wanted to learn, you would buy the songbook. So I had the songbook for Harvest by Neil Young, and it looked exactly like the album, except more pictures in it. Because
it seemed easier to play too when you're not a guitar player like I was, who wasn't very good, and you just saw DAG. I can do that.
There it is. Well, no, I mean, when I was a little kid, you're like, oh, there it is. There, those books were often wrong because they're transcribed by a piano player, but that, I had that, and I just decided I was going to do that, and I had a book, the specific model for it, and I'm not giving too much away about myself. I had a book when I was in high school that was that compiled Working Man's Dead and American Beauty, the two best Grateful Dead albums. I'm just going to say that there. I'm going to get some shit from people for that, but into one book, and it was designed by Alton Kelly and Stanley Mouse, who were the famous Kelly Mouse poster artists from San Francisco, and it's just an unbelievably beautiful book, like really big, thick book with a bespoke piece of art for each song. So you turn the page, Dire Wolf, there's a stained glass vision of a wolf. Cumberland Blues, there's a picture of like this sort of the Cumberland Mine. Amazing sort of thing. And I used that as the model for making this book. So I decided I gave all the songs to my wife, and I said, just go down to your studio and try and come up with something that seems to fit the song.
Brilliant
And she's
idea.
not an illustrator; she's a painter. So this was like a big. Everything that she does comes from. It's not when she paints her own stuff. It, she doesn't have an assignment. This was like an assignment, so it's like she had to put on her illustrator hat and do it. But she did. She just did an absolutely beautiful job, and the book just came out really, really great. I'm very proud of it.
It's a fantastic idea. I absolutely love it, man. Um, I wanted to ask you about this. I read somewhere that you've had some music on some TV shows. Justified is something I just got into recently, and it's
So
fantastic. So you had some songs on there in True
I had a
Blood?
song. I had a song in Justified. A couple going back to the Go to Blazes days is when we first started getting some syncs, and it was a revelation that you could make money on it, and that was like the Wild West, early beginnings of sort of uh, bands getting good sort of
Licensing?
syncs. And so we had a song in Melrose Place, and
Oh, you did?
yeah, I can't remember which song it was. It's on my BMI statement. Um,
Oh, you're
and
the songwriter too, so that makes
yeah,
it
well,
even
you know,
better.
the other thing is, as a band, we did the right thing, and the two of us were. I was one of the principal songwriters in Go to Blazes, and but we shared the publishing amongst all of us, so everybody got paid, which was, it's the kind of the right thing to do, I guess. It's not for everybody.
Not yeah, it's weird how some bands do that and some don't, but you know what? I'm gonna leave that up to the band. Long as bands don't sell their publishing, that's or songwriters don't, and a lot of them have, and they all end up regretting it eventually, but it's the
Yeah,
most valuable thing you have, right?
yeah. I mean, it's except that now there's this move where people are selling their entire catalog, and for enormous amounts of money, and I understand that. I understand why people do that. Like, I guess, like Bruce sold his entire catalog, and other people have sold their, and it's because
I
they're
was
gonna.
I was thinking more in terms of a development and an up and comer
Yeah,
doing it.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
people give away. They take a deal where they give away big chunks of their public. I've always held on to everything, and we've always held on to everything, and it's helped me. It's helped me make a little bit of money. Yeah, what small amount of money I've made in the business has always been through syncs. It's like it's it's just the way it is. So
You also played with a ton of people. I got a list here. John Doe, Alejandro Escovedo, I love him. Chuck Prophet, you mentioned. Penelope Houston from the Avengers. Roy Loney, you mentioned. I mean, what are some of the highlights of some of those things that you did for our listeners here?
mostly that those um, all of those gigs have just found me. Music has taken me some great places. So uh, I continue to play with Penelope when she does her folk thing. She has this whole sort of
Yeah.
sideline as this sort of a folk singer, and so I accompany her on a lot of stuff. And I found myself doing like in just weird places playing gigs. I'm like, wow, music took me here. We're playing at City Lights Books. We're doing some function at City Lights, and we're rehearsing in Lawrence Ferlinghetti's office. And Lawrence
Wow.
Ferlinghetti is like kicking us out of his office. He's, hey kids, I need to get in here. And he's just a 90-year-old man is saying, get out of my office. Stuff like that doesn't happen every day. When I did a tour with Alejandro. This is going way back into the early 2000s, and I find myself in North Carolina recording with Chris Stamey, and it's like, oh, this is amazing. And with Chuck, I wound up, like I'm on the BBC with Chuck, on playing guitar with him on the radio in London, and I still have my tag from the BBC, and not to mention just getting to hang out with people that are great and stuff like that. And so it's all been fantastic in a way.
One last thing about San Francisco. I used to go there for a lot, but it's been a long time since I've been there. I always thought it was one of the coolest places in the world. I can understand how you could end up living there. How have you seen it change since you got there in 2000, the last 20 years or so? Has it changed a lot, or do you feel like it's still really the city?
I mean, it's sure you know, it's changed a lot. I moved here during when I moved here in '98. The city was you know, going through. It wasn't the first tech boom that hit the city, but it was a particularly big one. And
The 90s, yeah.
yeah, late, you know, so late '90s, it was like a lot of like speculation, like speculation money, like spec money for everything, and it just sort of had a really charged up atmosphere, and a lot of people had moved here, you know, following the sort of tech jobs, and then that crashed in 2001. And then it happened again. And so I've watched it go through these boom and bust cycles. But the last real boom cycle was when the city did this thing. They call it they waived the payroll tax as a bid to get a bunch of tech companies to move into the city. They waived the payroll tax, so Twitter moved into San Francisco, and a bunch of other uh, tech companies moved their offices into the city. It's just an effort to sort of revitalize downtown, and it really, really, really impacted the housing situation that was
Wow.
already very difficult here. And so you had this massive influx, and at the same time uh, that they were doing that, you know, waiving the payroll tax, the companies that were based in Silicon Valley started running these free bus services for their employees through the city. So you had these private buses on city muni routes, and so the city just felt it felt jammed packed. And at the same time, you had the rise of Uber and Lyft, uh, where all of a sudden you have 50,000 extra cars in the city every day. People were driving in. Drivers are driving in from way outside, from 2 hours away, 3 hours away, and spending. You know, drivers would spend 48 hours in the city just driving. I know that because like a lot of them, there's some parking around where I live, and people would Uber and Lyft drivers would park here and sleep in their car, and then wake up and then just go back. And so you cram as much money as they could.
Wow.
So the city had this really overheated feel, and just jam packed and sort of bursting at the seams. Um, and it was there was nothing civic minded about it. I don't want to get too much into the politics of it because it's not really my place to talk about it, and there are people that are much better about talking about this than me. But there's you know, I work in a bar in my neighborhood, and there was a lot of static, a lot of sort of, hey, you know, where are you from? I was born and raised here. Where are you
Mhm.
from? Sort of stuff.
Sounds
And
like Boston.
and it's a strange thing where, you know, where, you know, everybody was sort of suspect in a way, as a sort of a town and gown sort of thing, like, and and it was very, the atmosphere got kind of tense in that respect,
Yeah.
because people felt like we were being overrun. And that was, you know, that's part of the question at 24th Street Blues that I try and address. um, is this thing is like, I've lived here for 25 years. Do I get to claim being from here? I don't claim that I'm
Mhm.
from here. I'm part of the, I am, you know, I'm a wave of gentrification, even though I'm not in the tech industry, and I work in the neighborhood that I live in, and I'm hyper local, and my wife teaches at City College of San Francisco, and is, you know, which is a wonderful place and really part of the community. We are still not from here. And so it raises all sorts of questions if you think about it, and the way the culture of a place changes. But that, that's the thing. That's the nature of cities.
Yeah.
Cities change. They
There's
change.
a lot of similarities, I think. There are people have always said that Boston and San Francisco were a lot alike, and even in this respect, because all these big tech companies have taken over Boston now, and it's people living there are outpriced. You can't afford to pay
So,
$3,000 a
Boston's
month.
always been an expensive city.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things. There's a lot of reasons why people are attracted there. Just like there's a lot of reasons why people are attracted to San Francisco.
Yeah. I
They're
still love
attracted
this.
because of
I still think if I get back up to San Francisco, I'm going to LA in September, but I don't think I'll make it up there, unfortunately. So getting back to the record, I didn't mean to take you off track
yeah.
there. Do you have plans to take it on the road, or are you just going to
Yeah, I'm trying to put that together now. I definitely, I'll get back east for sure and hit some of my old haunts. So yes, and the songs are really designed for me to play them solo, which is the best, most affordable way for me to do anything nowadays with anybody. So I really know how to play these songs by myself, and so I will definitely be on the East Coast and try and get around as much as I can. Yeah.
Well, I think your album, the whole idea, the concept and everything is really cool. I really like it. And thanks a lot, man, for taking the time to talk to us. I appreciate it very much.
Great
And I
conversation.
wish you the best of luck with this record too.
Thanks very much. I really appreciate that. It's been a fun conversation.
All right, man. Good luck to you.
Take care.